So last week, y'all might remember that we were working on an encounter that was going to take place kind of in these woods. The party was going to run into... I will work as your distraction, so pay me no heed. I will try my best to stay focused. So, party was going to run into this ambush by some folks from the some salamander worshipping bandits, who, like, they were pretty. I did already fail. They were pretty confined to this northern kind of desert barrens area. Like, they hadn't really pushed down past. Hadn't really pushed down past this here, like mountain range, like to the lake. Like, this was kind of the line. You know, I would say probably down to these lakes. And the forces of Salamander hadn't really pushed past that, but they have grown. And at this point, they've, like, come down here as part of a front that we have going in the background of the world. One of the campaign fronts. One of the large threats in the game is the forces of Salamander, and as, like, it progresses forward, they will make their way closer and closer to Eden, and worse things will happen. And that, for the players, came up, you know, manifested in them getting ambushed in, like, this area, like, pretty close to Eden, by this group of Salamander bandits. We're not Salamanders themselves, to be clear, but, you know, they're like people who worship the god of Salamander, who has kind of inherited the domain of fire after the old gods were sealed away. So they handled this pretty well. It was like, you know, there were a lot of enemy characters, moving the card around. There are a lot of enemy characters for them to handle, so, like, the enemies had a bit of an action economy advantage. But, you know, most of the NPCs, other than the sorcerer here, were, like, powered down a little, at least in terms of AC and hit points. They still basically had the regular amount of power as, like, a character of their level, maybe just a little less, while having, like, kind of drastically less HP. So, Salamanders are the Fire Nation. Do they attack? They have at least twice at this point, yes. So, fight started. Kind of a cool part, you know, obviously there was going to be a bit of an ambush. Once the cart was more in place, these guys were just going to, like, jump out. They were kind of hiding on the sides. But Sonus was, you know, one of the... never one to let a plan go as planned. He, like, hopped off the cart. Big, imposing figure with a paddle the size of him. A sword the size of him, a large greatsword. Jumped off the cart, and he started walking forward. And in his apparently threatening Minnesotan accent, he was just said, what do you think you're doing in the road? Why don't you get out of the way, bud? And the sorcerer, after Sonus rolled extremely well on his intimidation check, the sorcerer, like, went all wide-eyed, took a step back, just pointed at him and, like, looked in the woods, and he was like, get him! Get that one first! And effectively ruined the ambush. And everyone at that point rolled initiative. The mooks ran out of the woods and did try to jump on Sonus, which I'm not sure if he helped himself or hurt himself there. But at the very least, they were not surprised. So he took a bunch of damage and almost went down right away. Had to take some healing. There were some lessons learned, I think, in terms of positioning and, like, letting oneself get flanked as a rather a not very beefy sorcerer. Like, he's got 36 HP. It's a decent amount. He's got more than the bard, you know, but he's got less than the thief and less than the alchemist. So he was getting a little scared. He was backtracking a little bit, had to get covered by his allies, but Ludwig made use of one of the items we made, the branch that lets him cast a heightened version of darkness. He plopped it. Thank you, Ludwig. Plopped it right down onto where the sorcerer was standing, and the sorcerer, like, this was a good move action economy wise. The sorcerer didn't want to move right up to where Sonus was. He was still very freaked out about this this warrior, and, like, ran back and all the way around. And yeah, by the time he got there, a lot of his allies were kind of having trouble, you know, getting knocked down, kind of left and right, getting beat up. And I think another partially big thing that happened was like these two, a dagger wielding enemy and a shield and sword wielding enemy. They jumped up on here, where the rather squishy party members were, Solus in particular, and like started attacking him. He played a song. He played an ability I didn't know he had, a performance that like reduces their attack, but also if they, I think it's if they critically fail on their save, they don't get to fight anymore. They just don't get to take hostile actions. They don't get to attack. So the sword and shield guy, he just like felt a little weak, and he was like, all right, well, this guy's got some tricky magic, but I'm going to keep fighting. Daggers over here. He like fell to his knees and just could not bring himself to fight. He was like, what are we even fighting for, man? So he was disabled for the entire fight, assuming that no one took a hostile action against him, which they wisely did not. Yeah, you can't hit me if you fail. You can hit someone else though. Oh, is that it? I don't think that's it. I don't think it's like Sanctuary. We can look it up later just to make sure. But yeah, I read the not Sanctuary. No, it's a performance thing. It's like what was it called? It's like a apathetic something, something like that. And we can look through the performances later. But it's like a very minor. It's like a Bane debuff or a very serious you can't attack anyone debuff if they critically fail. Yeah, something to cause a moral dilemma, exactly. So they like mopped it up. They killed about half of these guys and like managed to evenly knock out several of the others. They took some non-lethal damage. The guy that like fell off the cart took like just non-lethal. And the same with the sorcerer. And they made a couple of interesting decisions there. They're like, all right, well, there's this guy who didn't fight us at all because he'd succumbed to the bard's performance. We're just going to leave him. We're just going to take all their weapons, pile it on the cart. We're going to take their armor, and we're going to take their clothes. And then we're just going to leave everyone here except the sorcerer who is in charge. And we're going to tie him up. We're going to take him with us. We're not that far from Eden. The chances of him like getting in trouble, they're pretty low. So we're just going to tie him up on top, and we'll haul him along. And that turned out to be very important later. They just accidentally found themselves in very fortuitous circumstances by like, I guess they were planning ahead just in case. They knew they were going to be able to do something with the sorcerer, but they didn't know what yet. Same with like carrying along the skull of Explicita Defilis, the like the demigod that they defeated in the swamp, whose skull they kept. So they took robes along. They asked for his name, and just I was like, his name is Boris. Like, which I thought was funny for what was supposed to be a throwaway NPC. His entire purpose in life was to give our sorcerer a glove that would give him a wizard focus spell, as give him access to that, and he served that purpose. So I didn't care what happened to him after that. I did not name him, so his name was Boris, which you might recognize as a palindrome of robes. Anyway, so they pulled up to Eden after, again, they almost didn't take this sorcerer prisoner. They almost didn't take anyone prisoner or leave anyone alive. Solus is very like, nah, these guys are a threat to Eden. They're with Salamander. Let's just execute them here. And the rest of the party was like, it's okay, it's fine. Let's take him with us. We're not really digging this. And Solus was like, all right, fine. All right, we'll keep him alive. We'll take this guy prisoner and, heavily threaten the others. And so they took off towards Eden, and the next day they arrived at the gates to find them closed. There were several travelers sitting around wanting to get in, people from around Eden, people from afar, and a couple of guards atop the gate. And the party was like, hey, so what's going on here? And the people outside were basically like, I don't know, man, they won't let us in. So they asked the guards to top the gate, and they said, there's some kind of disturbance in the middle of town. Like, we're not being told anything. We of the Green Stags, the guards of the city, we're not being told what's going on. We were told to stay at the barracks and guard the gates, and that is all the jurisdiction we have right now. They said the Presidia, the kind of royal guard that's been converted to the council guard, like, they'll take care of it. So the Green Stags have no idea what's going on. They just say no one's allowed in or out by order of the council. And then Eve says, hold up a minute. Are you sure you want to do that? Because I'm, like, the counselor's daughter. I'm, like, one of the very important counselors. Councilman Milo. I'm his daughter, Evelina Milo. And they the guards looked at each other, and they're like, well, all right, crap, what do we do now? They're like, well, it's not really safe for you here. They're like, this unrest, it's for your good, too. And they're like, nah, we're not having that. Come on, let us in. You know my father's not going to be happy if, like, you waylay me. I have important business with the council. And so they rolled a combination of very good deception checks and diplomacy checks. And they were like, by the way, we have this prisoner as well. We have Solus here, who's from an important noble family. Like, we've got a lot of clout. Just let us in. And the guards were like, all right, okay, fine. You can come in. Yeah, Boris served a purpose getting them into the city along with their good genes, I guess. So yeah, they were allowed in, and they were like, okay, let's head to the council building. Lord Marius de Vol, you take this kid who is apparently important to your family for some reason. You take him. Our guy, Ben Griff, he's going to go with you, keep you safe. We're going to go check out what's happening at the council chamber. So they headed there. They found, like, a line of Presidia guards standing in front, looking very menacing in front of the council building with, like, pikes and very heavy, very large tower shields. And, like, if anyone got close, they would, like, drop their pikes, kind of, like, poke a little bit, be like, no, you're not getting... You stay on that side of the square. And if you approach, we're gonna just skewer you. We're not joking around. We mean business. And going through the crowd, the party managed to, like, pick up that everyone's basically pretty mad at the council because this pretty large force of salamanders forces, like a group, made their way down all the way to, like, kind of their closest fort in the northeast. It is right, like here in one of these hills. I forget exactly where. So the forces of Salamander pushed all the way down, like, they pushed like 80 miles basically, up to kind of the last big fortress, which the councilman later described as, like, our greatest something or other. He described it as very strong fortifications, but really it's like a wood fort around a stone watchtower that's been set up kind of hastily in light of this conflict. So there's he's not telling the whole truth to, like, all the council members who've never even been out there. He's kind of flexing when there's nothing to flex. But the people of Eden are upset that, like, a threat has gotten so close. They've, like, cut in half the distance needed to come and attack the city in, like, a matter of, like, weeks. And so they're upset. They're like, all right, look, the Emperor died. This council just took over, and they're clearly not doing a good job. They've let our enemies get this close, and, like, stuff's out of control. The army is our small army is being pulled to this location, and it's leaving other places weak. So, like, what are you guys gonna do about this? Like, find a new ruler more competent than you guys. And yeah. So the party figured that out. They went up to the guards and they're like, yo, you're gonna let us through. And the guards are like, no, we're not. And then again, Eve was like, excuse me, I am Evelina Milo, daughter of the Councilman Milo. You're gonna let us through. And one of the guards, again, rolled really high on the diplomacy check there, like a 25 or something, like a 27. And if Evelina rolled any lower than that, it would have been like, okay, well, let's see her emblem, which I believe got sent with a letter to like get the werewolf-infected villagers into the city. So I don't think Evelina has access to that. So that would have been tricky, but she rolled quite high, and so got by no problem. But they said, all right, we can let you through. We're not going to let our friends through, or your friends through. They got to wait outside, like everyone else. And then Solus is like, excuse you, I am also quite important. I am a noble. I am Solthariel Abishan. And I'm with Eve. You're going to let us two and our entourage of servants through. And again, he rolled okay. He rolled like a 20, and I told him, all right, sure, if you roll higher than a 20, he's just going to let everyone in. And he rolled higher than a 20. I think a hero point might have been spent for that. I don't recall. But so they got everyone in. And the first thing they do is like, Eve's just like, give me one of those invisibility potions. I'm gonna go try to snoop on what they're talking about right now. Like before we go in and make a fuss. So Eve does that. Solus basically just delays the guards who are like asking what they're there for. The ones like in front of the deliberation chamber. And yeah, he handles that for a while. Evelina sneaks off, gets a good listen in the space of like the invisibility potion's effectiveness. And here's that, you know, they're fighting about, like, Eve gets to find out about the different factions that I've talked about in the last few prep sessions. So Eve finds out that there's a group of councilmen who like kind of want to keep power to the council. There's a group who's like, no, let's find an heir to the emperor. We have the power to do this. Like, this is going to appease the people the fastest. And then there's the prince who's like, no. Like, Adam's gone. My family gave power to Adam, but since he's no longer here, it should like revert back to me. And another councilman's like, no, like the people barely know who you are. They barely know your name, especially like all the young like humans and all the other species who aren't as long lived as us elves. The people who don't remember, like they're familiar with you and your rule. They're going to be more comfortable with someone of Adam's lineage ruling, and that kind of shuts him up a little bit. And that's about when Eve leaves. So she groups back up with the party, and she's like, okay, don't worry. I got this. I've got a little speech brewing in my mind. I think you'll all be happy with this. This solution I've come up with. And they walk in. Evelina starts being like, well, I hear you have a problem, a succession problem, and I've got a solution. And her father's just like, oh, of all the times for you to be eavesdropping, very well, what is your solution? And Eve's like, well, did you know that we have slain a god? And then like snaps, and someone like produces the head of Explicita Defilis and like drops it in front of the council as proof. And they like tell the council their story, and they say, you know, in addition to that, we met in our travels in the last few weeks, we met a representative of, you know, a worshiper of the Guardian in the North, this like harpy raised to deity status by like gnolls who kind of worship her as like basically a savior standing against forces of Salamander, keeping them neutral and like out of Salamander's control, essentially. So they're like, we have this connection. So I have two things to propose. One, we'll go talk to them. We'll get you some allies. It's in the bag. Just trust us with that. We'll handle getting these allies, and they'll help us on like, we'll make this a two-front fight. Number two, instead of like trying to find some random nobody who happens to have the Emperor's blood, who happens to be an heir, like in, you know, I don't want to call it an illegitimate heir because, yeah, like there's the Emperor was basically an immortal until very recent times. So he had many children, and basically like anyone who is human is of his lineage. So there's a lot of options. It's just about like narrowing down the options. Does he have god blood? There's a bit of that where like his lineage, his close lineage might be considered divine and like might have certain powers just because they're like worshipped by the people in this post old god world. So yeah, they say, in addition, instead of finding an heir, just make it whoever brings back the head of Salamander can be the next heir, can sit on the throne. And the councilmen like kind of look at each other and they're like, okay, all right, that's interesting. That would solve the problem. One of the councilmen are like, so I bet you had some Godslayers in mind then. And they're like, they shrug. They're like, who knows? You know. And then they're like, all right, not bad, but we're going to refine the legalese here. Whoever shall slay and bring back the head of Salamander will sit on the throne and rule with the council as an advising body. And the party just shrugs, and they're like, all right, that sounds okay to us. So that's set up. And then they're like, all right, well, one of the council members in particular, I don't remember quite which one, I think it was the head of the Bronze Darters, which is like a very well-known adventurers guild, basically, kind of a rangers guild. They do a lot. That was smart. They had this accidental preparation. They had these resources that they'd stored up in the form of like Explicita's head. They have this prisoner who will come into play in a moment, and you know, the connections. They put out a very plausible solution here. But yeah, the head of the Bronze Darters is like, all right, well, what do we do about this now? Like, with the people who are angry now, they're gonna, you know, we can announce that we're like putting in place this ruler or whatever, like whoever brings back Salamander's head will be the ruler, but that, you know, we need something more to like get them to chill out, you know? Just saying that might not be enough. And so they're like, oh, funny you asked. And then they like shove forth the prisoner. And they're like, this is, and I think they just said like, this is a lieutenant in Salamander's army. He waylaid us on the road. They were gathering resources for Salamander's forces. We captured him en route to Eden. So how about you execute him and like talk up his importance. Execute him, show that like Salamander's forces aren't invisible, they make mistakes, invincible. They make mistakes, and that, you know, we can gain ground against them too. We will like push back. Like use this person as a sacrifice basically to like sate their current bloodlust a little bit. The council's like, all right, very well. And again, there are like roles going on here, enhanced by the fact that they have these resources ready to go and like answers for all of these questions just like on, you know, going. The cleverness, yeah. The party has gotten real like smart about stuff recently, and it's pretty cool to see. Or maybe it's just stuff they've been setting up for is paying off. Like the cards they've been stacking in their deck are starting to come up. So yeah, they walk out, and Eve is sitting there being like all proud, like, wasn't that great? Wasn't that speech great? Didn't I come up with an awesome solution? And Sonus is like, I don't really care who leads the city. It's fine with me. Ludwig, the alchemist, is like, no. No, this is terrible. You're just, like, this guy we brought back as a prisoner, like, he's gonna just get executed now, like, in the public square. Like, this isn't what I wanted. And Solus is like, Eve, literally just any idiot can, like, take the throne now. This is awful. And Eve is like, no, we're gonna take the throne. It's like, no, I mean, we're gonna try. But, like, just any asshole strong enough to kill Salamander, like, are you the strongest in the city? Are you the fastest in the city? And he's like, no, not really. It's like, well, we're not the best anything. We know there are powerful people out there. They're just gonna, like, run. They're gonna beeline to fight Salamander before us, and they might actually succeed. Like, if someone just goes and assassinates Salamander, right? Like, it's far-fetched, but so is the idea of us killing Salamander. Like, it's all far-fetched. We're in Far-Fetched Town. Like, yeah, good to hear there are other powerful people in town? Yes. I give enough hints about that. There's a guy called Brass who, like, he's like in town. He like made a speech in front of the people after the prisoner was executed, saying, "No, this is good enough." You know, he's like the leader of just like a spin-off guild, like a mercenary company called the Brass Scales that he leads, and the players know who Brass is because he came up in world building. They're like he takes control of people who want to go back to the old ways. Like this is a thing that happens for sure. So he's an important NPC. They know it. They know he's strong. And yeah, he likes this solution, which probably says something to them. So yeah. So the player characters all kind of split off in their different directions to like take a breather and like handle some stuff. They all basically sent notes to people being like, all right, we're in town. Like all this craziness that's happened, we're just checking in, we're making sure everything's all right. We're gonna have to do some crazy stuff, so maybe let's talk for a minute before I leave about like how we can prepare. They all go reach out to their connections in town, basically. And then unexpectedly, Solis gets a note, gets a runner that comes up to him when he's outside the gates, like going to his house, which lies near the gala grounds. That's where his family has some power. Runner comes up and is like, "Hi, I have a note from someone who has experience leading and claim to the throne." It's like, okay, great. What can I do for you? And they're like, yeah, they want to have a meeting. You just stirred up some stuff, so they want to have a chat. And he's like, okay, great. Well, I'm going to go get my group. You know, he's just like, all right, just like, tell me where to meet, and I'll do that. And he's like, I'll come find you, basically. Like, where should I find you? Solus points him towards like an inn in the Wide Stacks. And the runner's like, great, I'll find you there and talk to you in a bit. So yeah, the party, Eve and Sonus basically just go to drink. They're like, all right, what, like this is, oof. This has been some stuff. It's been a long time since we've been in town. Let's just go relax. And Ludwig is like, I'm just going to go lock myself in my room and work on some alchemy while we're in town. Going to work on figuring out, you know, how to make new stuff. So just don't bother me. I'm a little upset about this whole thing with the prisoner. He had like a little moment with the prisoner where he was like, I actually should have mentioned this earlier. It was pretty cool. He was like, hey, this isn't really how I meant for this to go. It seems like you're going to get your head chopped off, and really I was trying to show you mercy, and I don't know if this is really mercy. Like, if I knew this was going to happen, I would have just taken away your head on the road. You wouldn't have had to deal with coming all the way here, just a day, and, like, losing your head here. And he was like, why are you being kind to me? I wouldn't have shown mercy to you. I just tried to kill you on the road. He's like, yeah, well, you know, that's why you're the bandit, and I'm the scholar trying to do the right thing. Like, one of us has to not be the ruthless bandit taking gold by knife point. And he shrugs. He's like, doesn't matter. I'm nothing. This isn't going to mean anything. And Ludwig's like, great. Great. And so, yeah. And I think later I said, rumor has it that, like, the guy's last words were something along the lines of, I am nothing, which he shouted to the crowd before the axe came down for his head. And that, you know, then, like, Brass gave his little speech that I gave the Cliff Notes for. Ludwig gets cool points for that. I agree. I would have given him... I should, like, give him an extra hero point at the start of next session for that. Because, like, the end of the session was coming up. I wasn't doling out hero points in the last little bit. Everyone had, like, they were kind of flush. They didn't need too many. And they were doing cool shit, so they had a bunch. But, yeah. So the party groups back up. Solus finds the party at the bar, says, hey, got a runner that says he wants us to meet an important person. Let's go talk to him. And so the party, like, gathers up. Runner comes. They follow the runner. They enter a smithy, where there's a blacksmith working. He sees the party enter. Like, the runner kind of nods, the blacksmith nods. He, like, sets down his work, leaves, and heads back towards the bar that they just left. And they walk into a back room. There's someone they recognize as the prince, who is currently, you know, the council member, the prince, the member of the old royal family. He's sitting in a chair, legs crossed, has a glass of wine that he's looking at, kind of swirling around a little bit. And as they enter, you know, he's like looking at his glass. He's like, so, Godslayers. And yeah, so that's where we left it, with the large implication that the prince wants them to, like, work for him. It's like, we can this isn't a spoiler, it's fine. Yeah, the heavy implication that the prince is going to be like, yo, if the burden of leadership is too heavy for you, I can lift that burden. Family's got a lot of practice doing it. Like, you can just bring that head back to me. Like, we can figure something out. That's going to be kind of the deal going forward. You know, that's his deal. That's what he wants to give them. Although he was hoping for a meeting with just Solus, and he's a little surprised that it's the entire party, but he's going to go ahead and make the sales pitch anyway. And yeah. And that's, yep, that's where we left it. He's already working towards his goals. Yeah, he does not miss a beat, man. He's like, all right, the situation has changed, and in a way that, like, might be good for me. Let's check it out. Let's see if we can make something of this, you know? So that's where he's going. I'm gonna take a brief break, and then we're gonna jump over to the prep session, which is gonna be a lot of filling out. First of all, I have to fill out the rest of the council because that's suddenly important. I was like, yo, the council voted, by the way, on whether to accept the party's proposal, and it succeeded by a vote of like 6-4. So I told the party that I would, like, write out the rest of the council members. I've got like 6 already, and I need to get up to 10, so we need to fill out a couple of those. And, like, told them I'd give them that vote, and then we're going to fill out this upper area with some points of interest. I think we're gonna at least figure out where, like, the salamander center of power is. We're gonna figure out where the guardian in the north, that harpy's center of power, is, and maybe fill out some of the stuff in between with some tools that I have to help with random generation and, like, getting my thoughts rolling. And so I will be back in a